Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Finance and Corporate Services Committee. We have a fairly brief agenda. We're going to start with the consent items, and I do have two people in the queue. Before I get to the consent items, there is an item of note. For item number 2, it is listed in our document that the province's contribution for the program is $350,000. The good news is that dollar amount's actually supposed to be $500,000, okay? Just so everyone's clear on that. So on item number 2, the $350 is actually $500,000 in the recommendation, okay? Councillor Gazzola.
I have a couple of questions on it.
So you're making a motion to take them out of consent?
I'm making a motion, what?
To take them out of consent?
Yes, okay.
On both of them?
Yes.
Okay, I'll take that. Those in favor? And that carries. Councillor Gazzola, your questions.
I guess my first question, too, was sort of what gets to consent and what doesn't. Here we're dealing with some fairly substantial items, and it's in consent. I don't want to use up my time on that. I wonder if you can. Is there a detailed budget for this project? I would like to see that. And are there financial statements for the Waterloo Region Small Business Center? I would like to see how that all ties in together, if that's possible. The other question I have, those are requests that I would like to see before this is ratified next Monday, I guess it is. This sort of, from what I'm reading, it covers a period of 6 months. What happens in the next 6 months after that?
Okay, so the question is, what happens after the 6-month trial period?
Right. Am I expecting an answer?
Yes, sorry, just taking some time here. Ms. Farrell.
So it is a pilot project through the chair, and the government is willing to make a contribution to that pilot project, and from there on out, after the project is finished, we would review and possibly raise funds through private sector.
Another question I had, and it's you talk about 700 jobs being created. Is there a possibility of getting some detail on that? A little fact checker? And that you don't have to do that today either. That's something you can do for next week. Okay.
720.15. So you want clarification on
some detail on.
Some examples of some.
Pardon?
Some examples of some people, some companies, some that were.
Well, I'd like to see how we come up with the figure of 700. We bandy about a lot of figures all the time, but there's never really any. Where do those figures come from? Surely they don't just come out of the air.
Right.
There have to be some facts upon which they're based. The other question I wondered about was we had a detailed schedule last week that we dealt with on the reserve fund in economic development. Were these items? There are 2 items here. Were these items included on that detailed sheet?
Mr. Bloom?
Yes, they were.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I have some questions, similar type questions on the second request.
On the second request, go ahead.
I was trying to read it and I was getting confused. It talks about 30 grants, and then on top of the page 2 it goes to 36, and then it says it was doubled to 66. I'm having trouble following the math. Was it 30 or was it 36?
So through the chair, the initial funding was to provide 36 grants to small businesses, and these are $5,000 grants. And then in 2015, the government increased the number of grants that we could distribute to small businesses in this community and raised it to 66.
Okay, so on the bottom of 2.1 you say you initially received 30 grants. So So was it 30 or?
It was 30, yes.
Okay. Again, you give some details of the impact of it. Yeah, we saw 150 small businesses created, resulting in 474 new jobs. Is there some detail that can be provided on that?
Yes, we can provide that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, to clarify then, Councillor Gazzola has asked for more financial details on the arrangement, as well as the financial updated statement for the small business center. I'm not sure if that's available yet. I guess the most recent, Councillor Gazzola, that's available? Yes, most recent that's available. And just some additional details on the, and I realize that the Small Business Center can't take full credit for the full job creation, but they assisted in the creation of those jobs. So some additional detail on that and those businesses. And a follow-up in email, Councillor Gazzola, I assume is adequate? Very good, thank you. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, I'll just move the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I completely understood in the last, on page 2-2, the statement that says the funding will cover up to 60 grants for entrepreneurs to start, grow, or buy businesses, wages and benefits for 1.5 full-time staff and operations over a 2-year period. Are we saying that the $35,000 is going to cover a 1.5 full-time staff? Like, it just... I feel like I'm looking at two pieces here. One is the $350,000 grant from the province of Ontario. The other is the $35,000 grant from the request for the city of Kitchener. And then we're going to be doing grants plus a 1.5 full-time staff. Is that right?
Sorry, Councillor Fernandez, you might have stepped out, but I did get a note that the $350 from the province is actually $500,000. Just as a bit of context.
I did step out. Yeah. So,
Ms. Farrell, did you want to comment on the staffing question?
Yes, so the funding that we're asking for from the City of Kitchener will be used towards operational expenses such as wages, marketing, those types of expenses.
So
the total funding from the province includes operational and grant dollars.
So the $35,000 that you're asking for will be to employ a staff person?
To help with that, yes.
How do you break out their work on that related to their work on other items?
So there'll be one full-time person dedicated to this project and one part-time person.
And that's to come out of the $535,000?
Yes.
For 2 years?
Yes.
How do we know exactly how much? I heard you say the grants were $5,000 each. Is that right?
They're up to $5,000.
Up to $5,000. Okay. What happens if you don't get enough applications? What happens to that money?
Oh, we will.
You'll get 60 plus applications?
We had, in the last round of funding, we had over 700 applications.
700 applications, okay. How is this connected to the program that's run during the summertime?
The summer company is a separate program.
Okay.
And separate funding from this.
So you've got 700 applications. How many of these businesses go on to be more than just a one-time deal, one-time shot, that they actually start to have a foundation and hire employees? Do you follow that progression?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And when do you release the information about where, companies A, B, C, D, E, F, G, for example, went in a year and 2 years and 3 years from now? Where do you publish that information?
Oftentimes you'll see stories on our website, but publishing it, we don't necessarily publish that.
Well, I guess when I'm saying publish, I mean, put out in the media, give the information to council. Surely you must have some benchmarking that has to be done through the province to the province to show what has been accomplished with this grant money.
That's correct, and we have a way of tracking all of those metrics.
Okay. It would be very interesting to me, and maybe to the rest of council, to see some examples of what has happened in the past and where some of those businesses have gone. And maybe just some anecdotal information might be really helpful. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Just as a quick aside, too, that's been a common trend on Economic Development Committee and part of the Make It Kitcheners. Need to do a better job of telling some of those success stories, big and small. Like it just because your business ultimately only employs 3 or 4 people doesn't mean it shouldn't be publicized the same way as some of the larger companies. Yes, should be, absolutely. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair Davey. Chris, just a question regarding other startup supports in our community. Do you collaborate with other organizations, such as, for example, the Working Center, who has a micro business entrepreneurship mentorship program, and or other organizations?
That's a great question. We collaborate with many organizations throughout the region. In fact, just this morning we were running a session with Working Center, and it's how to start a business. It's being delivered in English and Arabic. We have 16 people in our room right now.
Oh, wow. That's exciting. And so you don't see us as competing for participants with other organizations? We're working together to share our information?
We consider ourselves a part of the entire ecosystem of entrepreneurship and collaborate with many organizations.
Okay. And do we offer something separate or different from other organizations that no other organization does, or not?
Yes, we work with all types of businesses, so all industry sectors. We're not exclusively tech sector, so we see many Main Street type businesses, all different industry sectors coming in, all different types of entrepreneurs coming into our center.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there are no further questions in the queue. Just before we take the vote, I just wanted to be clear on this point. There was some questions from committee, and I think they were good questions doing our due diligence, but I think it's recognized this is very good for us to have this sort of investment coming down, and I'm happy to see it before us, so it's good work. Moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Those in favour? And that carries unanimously with everyone that's here. We will now move on to the discussion item, the Corporate Strategic Action Plan, item number 3. There is no presentation, so we will just get right into questions. I realize this covers the entire cross-section of the organization, and I expect questions, but we do have limitations in terms of our timing, so I don't have anyone in the queue yet. Councillor Fernandez.
So when I went through this document, Laurie, I understand how we're breaking it out between different sections. So if we go to page 3-14, which is all the all the Make It Kitchener and funding for the arts. Are we like, I'm looking at this and we're tracking all the way to 2019. Considering that there's a limited funding pot for this, what's going to happen after 2019? Is there a plan? Is this just as far as we're looking out? And I know that's a pretty big question, but I just have to ask that.
Mr. Bloom?
Through the chair, so at least in reference to the Make It Kitchener items, These relate to the Economic Development Strategy, which is a 4-year document that Council approved and basically lives for the course of your Council term. And then when the subsequent Council comes on board, we will bring forward a new strategy. So this is really earmarking that there are a number of initiatives, predominantly at a staff level, that will be carried out over the next number of years as we implement the actions in that strategy. Some are budget contingent and will come to Council for approvals. Others are just ones that we carry out in the normal course of our work.
Okay, thanks. With regard to, so I know, Lori, that you met with probably most of Council on what we wanted to see move up, or if we wanted to see any changes. I have that, sort of that paper that you and I had discussed. Is the fact that you heard more from, or maybe I'm expecting that you heard more from Council, that there wasn't any changes that wanted to happen. But then I see new strategic actions to be added on page 329. Where did those come from?
Ms. Major, you can stay queued in as well.
Every year through the business planning process, we ask our department heads and our directors, so our corporate management team, to update the business plan based on things that may have changed, new pressures, new initiatives, new requests from Council. So a number of those new initiatives that are included to be added to the plan this year, I'd say almost half, if not more of them, are to follow through on previous commitments. So it's sort of the implementation or follow through of projects that had previously come forward to Council with recommendations. Others are based on things that services require to, continue to deliver those services. It's sort of the culmination of the corporate management team's assessment of what we need to do to continue to operate into the future, and that's the process we go through every year with our corporate management team, and we update the business plan accordingly.
Okay, so that leads me to the other question then. These new strategic actions that are being added, for the most part, I see a lot of no's in terms of where, if there's any budgeting for them. If these are not being implemented, the ones that are not being implemented this year, will they come back then next year with additional requests for funding? Or how do we move forward on these actions that were brought to you by staff?
If the word no shows up beside budget, it means that there is no issue paper or significant reallocation of budget for the 2017 budget that you're asked to approve this year. The majority of these projects can be done with existing capacity and staff. There may be budget implications in the future, and if there are, they will come forward in the appropriate year for them to be discussed through budget. But there will not be any additional requests beyond the ones that you have in front of you through the budget process for 2017.
Okay. When I look at page 3-34, there's a list of actions to be removed. The enhanced customer experience at the Odd, it was moved to core services. Can somebody help me understand what that means, that it was moved to core services?
Mr. May.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it was a project when the new manager came on at the Odd, he launched a very aggressive project to get all of our customer service training and procedures in order. That work is now done and can be covered as a standard part of what we do each day. So it's not a additional body of work that's required.
Okay, so that means that just rolls into the regular operational costs of the Odd?
So there wouldn't, for this particular item, there wouldn't be operational costs. The project itself that was on the business plan previously was about getting a training program in place, getting a reward program in place, those types of things. They're in place now, and now it moves to core service where those programs are being used to improve customer service at the Odd.
Okay, I see that my time's expired. I'll queue in again.
Please, thank you. Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just one question on pages 3.9 and 3-17. The affordable housing subject, I'm glad to see this moving ahead. I just personally wonder about the pace that it moves ahead. Why don't we just try a project? That's a simple question, I realize, but could someone respond to that? I see other municipalities in the region trying to build affordable housing. We just seem to be studying it to death.
Mr. May?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the one municipality I'm aware that's doing that started work on this before we did, is the long and short of that answer. I can tell you that right now we're projecting a report to come back to council in February for discussion.
That's great. Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. I would just note that we move much faster than other surrounding municipalities.
Sure, staff's appreciative of that, Councillor Etherington. Thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
I spent a long time reading all of this yesterday, so I have to ask at least one question. I really get confused as to what's a business plan and what's a strategic action plan. If I'm not wrong, this is really a strategic action plan. It doesn't really talk. To me, I expect different information for a business plan. So, am I all wrong there, or what?
I'm not sure if you're specific enough in what you expected for staff to respond.
I guess I'm wondering why we're calling it a business plan.
Okay, can we get an overview of the business plan, Ms. Major? Thank you.
Okay, you're not all wrong. You're absolutely right. This is a strategic action plan. That's what I brought forward to you, is a strategic action plan. It, once approved by council and supported by the budget, it becomes an important part of the business plan, but it is not the business plan. We do issue and update the actual business plan in February, March of every year. The business plan includes all of our core services, a description of those key activities, challenges, and metrics associated with the performance of those core services. And there's also budget information included in that, and an idea of the split between the amount of resources required to support core services versus strategic action plans. And as you know, I've mentioned several times to council and committee before, this strategic action plan only represents about 6% of the work of the organization, and the other 94% is represented by our core services. So you're right in noting that a significant portion of the business plan is not presented to you today. All of that work needs to be updated after the end of the year, mainly because it involves gathering data on the performance of those services. So we give them some time to collect year-end data and provide that to us. And then once we have all that together, we'll issue an updated business plan.
Thank you for that. That's what the other question I have is, I always looked upon a business plan not only to deal with a lot of detailed information, but also to show how there are pros and cons to something, and how by going in a certain direction, our business and our money, the bottom lines are better by going in one direction or another. Do we get that out of any of this? Like it's a plan that should help us make a decision on whether we go in a certain direction. And it's tied into business as opposed into political or moral or things like that, but it's a business plan.
I think that's beyond the scope. Mr. Wilmer, do you want to help out with that?
Through the chair, I think maybe the distinction is the business case that I think the councillor is referring to versus a business plan.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part.
So I think what you're asking about is what we would normally refer to as a business case.
Okay, that's good. Then do we do business cases?
We do for projects and new initiatives and when there's decisions to be made, yes.
Okay, and a business plan is just sort of details as to what number of staff we have and things like that.
Yes, the business plan outlines all of our work, core service and projects for a calendar year.
Okay, that's good to know. I might ask, there are a number of in the financial part of this, it dealt with, financial implications. It dealt with all of these issues they're all in our budget. There are, what do we call them, opinion or issue papers. But do we do a business case on those issues?
I don't know that we call them business cases. For some, actual business cases are done, but the business case is usually in the form of the issue paper. The issue paper is what justifies the investment and the amount of that investment and the commitment to move forward with the project is supported by the budget decision.
So you're calling those issue papers the business cases? Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzola. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question on 3-30 for the City Hall Outdoor Spaces Implementation Plan. It shows as of for part of the budget for 2017, $500,000 has been added. Just a reminder, where do we find that monies?
I believe that was the Economic Development Reserve.
Is that coming from the reserve?
That's what I recall, but I can get confirmation from that. So the $500,000 from the City Hall Outdoor Spaces, was that Economic Development Reserve, Mr. Chapman?
Through the chair, I'm fairly certain and will confirm that that amount was the capital out of current contribution for the upfront design.
Okay.
Okay, I thought so. I wasn't sure. I just wanted to clarify. The other question is for 3-34 for actions to be removed. We're removing the Neighborhood Matching Funds Grant Pilot Review. I apologize before I say this, but sometimes in our effort to reduce bureaucracy, we tend to mistakenly increase it as well. I've seen through a number of these initiatives, the neighborhood strategy, it's starting to encompass a lot of other smaller good projects or reviews that we had in process. Are we careful with our approach in that regard?
Mr. May?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure that I understand the question. The entire point of the neighborhood strategy is to make things as easy as possible.
No, I realize
this
that.
Doesn't change the matching grant in any way. It's simply going to be captured through the neighborhood strategy report that you'll see in February.
So, I was looking to hopefully get encouragement and confidence that programs such like these, their effort would not change as part of through process of the neighborhood strategy, that they will continue to receive the dedication that initially was recommended through previous council decisions.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I understand the question now. Absolutely. In fact, we're going to look to make a project like this easier and put more funding behind it so that the community has more opportunity to use it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah. So as I'm looking at all of the projects and the timelines, if there were projects in here that we felt needed to be pushed out further. So I'll just take, for example, the Zaire Square. How do we do that through this process?
I think you could do it through this process. I'd look to Mr. Wilmer. It would get a little bit messy, but it could be through this process. Mr. Wilmer.
Through the chair, yes, this would be the time to signal that. I think that the final decision would be made on budget day.
Okay, so that's because it has funding attached to it. But if there were items in here that didn't have funding attached to it, I'm trying to think of really quick off the top of my head here.
Well, through the chair, without having to get into a specific example, if there's something that doesn't have budget attached to it, but council feels should not be a priority or should be a later priority, again, today would be the time to signal that or ask us about it, because the work program is coordinated, and delaying work on one thing may have a domino effect on other projects, or may make capacity available so staff can be, or resources can be redeployed.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going with that. So, for example, I see that the development of alternative low-cost traffic calming options is on track. We've probably set staff and budget around that item. So I'm just saying I'm not moving that. I just want to make sure I understand completely where we are on an item like that. So we're tracking to continue moving forward with possible policy and expectations, and something that council would be able to approve in 2017. Is that right? Okay.
Seeing a nodding of a head.
Mr.
Yes.
Maynard. Okay. But if we were to look at so the leisure facilities master plan, for example, I know that we do a regular update of some of our master plans. This one is scheduled to be updated in 2018. There's a lot of work that hasn't even been started on that master plan. And we're going to be talking about probably hiring a consultant to the tune of maybe $50,000, which I think is about what we spent the last time. I would really like to see us push that out to 2020, because I think we have to get some of that work done before we even start reviewing the document now.
Just through you, Mr. Chair, a few things. First of all, it wouldn't be my expectation that we would spend anywhere near $50,000. Last time we did most of this work in-house, and I expect it would be the same. The driving force for the timing on this one's really simple. We need to update the Leisure Facilities Master Plan ahead of the next DC bylaw update, so that council can set new rec priorities for the DC bylaw funding. So that's how we've aligned the timing.
Okay, so really the timing is related to legislation.
Yes.
DC bylaw, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a legislative, okay. So yeah, I'm just gonna, is there any other questions? Because I really want to skim through here really quickly.
There are no one else in the queue, so go ahead.
Okay. I mean, I think there are some really great projects in here, but I think there are some that we probably should be pushing out a little bit, because I think that we have to take into consideration we're applying budget to projects that maybe it doesn't have to happen in 2017 or 2018. I'll pick on one of my most favorite ones, which is the, sorry, now I won't be able to find it, the Grand River Park on page 3-16. There is money already allocated for some work to be done on the Grand River Park, according to my review of the budget. Is that correct? Okay. So there is also some missing pieces in that whole park concept that we don't own yet. Is that correct?
If you're referring to the lands, yes.
Yes. Okay. So there is lands that we still don't own as yet. I think that maybe before we move into even phase one, we need to ensure that we own all of the land before we can start doing any programming, any master plans, anything like that. So would it be reasonable to expect to push that out instead of, we've done some work in 2016, but complete the next phase of that work in 2018, so that we just make sure that we are really secure with the lands that we want to have to do that project.
Ms. Fletcher?
Through you, Chair Davey, if I can clarify, phase one of the Grand River Park project is the actual acquisition of the missing pieces of land. So we wouldn't be moving on to any other significant work until the acquisition of the land. The other thing is, this was, my understanding, is one of the highest priorities for council and the community.
Well, it's the highest priority for some on council, because we can get into that argument.
I think Ms. Fletcher's referring to when we ranked them. So that's, yeah. She's referring to council's collective ranking, which takes precedence over any individual councillor's wish.
Okay, that's all my suggestions at this time.
Very good, thank you. Councillor Marsh?
Thank you, Chair Davey. Just a couple questions. One is regarding the neighborhood markets that's on 318. Just wondering about whether or not we're going to need to wait on the zoning bylaw updates, or will we be able to move forward on increasing the ability for neighborhood markets to take place before that's completed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, we do not have to wait for that. We have a solution for that. It is it was through the neighborhood strategy the third highest priority for neighborhood improvement projects, and so we'll be moving quickly in next year.
And do you know at this time if it's a staff initiative or if it's a consultant initiative?
So my understanding is it'll be run out of the market and it'll be done by staff.
Run out of our Kitchener market?
So they'll be the staff working on developing the program. If you remember the
right, yeah,
the neighborhood strategy. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it just I do remember now. So just another question, just regarding the complete streets policy. Where is it? 330.
317. Thank you,
Okay.
Councillor Galbraith-Seelock.
It's also on 335, 317. Hey. Okay, so I just wondered about, well, on 335, it's to be decided when the update when it'll be completed. But then on 317, it says in 2018 it'll be completed. Is that right? Yeah. So can I ask for clarification about that? And is it also going to be at all related to, well, first, yeah, let me just ask about when are we looking to complete that policy?
Mr. Eamon?
Through the chair, that's been delayed slightly to align with the cycling master plan and the trails master plan refresh. So that would be phase one of that work associated with that.
So cycling and trails master plan is completed 2019, right?
That's correct. So it would be slightly in advance of that.
Oh, okay. All right. And then I don't know if this is related or not, but do we have a complete neighborhoods official policy, and is it related to a complete streets policy?
Mr. May?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, we don't have a complete neighborhoods policy. I am aware of some municipalities have done it, but it's not something that's been on our work plan.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Etherington?
Yeah, sorry, I missed this one, Mr. Chair. Just through you on page 3-3, the Leisure Access Card Program. Can someone tell me how we are promoting awareness of that program? Because I often run into people who know nothing about our program, which is a very commendable program.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I know that we have a comprehensive marketing plan. In fact, I spend enough time in arenas these days to know that there are brochures in all of our arenas and would be in other facilities. What we have talked about going forward is actually ramping up not necessarily traditional marketing and promotions, but having staff speak one-on-one with community groups and service providers who deal with individuals who may want to take advantage of this program. So it'll be much more of a face-to-face promotions going forward.
Terrific. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Davey. Excuse me. My question is regarding, I don't know why I can't find it in here, but it's regarding the providing incentives for urban design and all that, and it was looked at, I think, being pushed back to 2018. I just want to get a little clarification as why that's being pushed out to 2018 when we're also looking at, because to me it seems important that it should be matched with parts and all that stuff, all of it collaborative, because it's all kind of relative. So.
Mr. May?
Yes, so through you, Mr. Chair, I'm unable to find it either, but what I do know is there's a series of incentives that are being considered through the comprehensive zoning review. I believe the project that you're referring to was much more focused on architecture, and so it's a whole other, we don't do much of that right now, and so it's a whole other body of work separate from that.
Okay. All right. Then my other question is dealing with with bees. I thought it was a pretty simple process that you guys would look into this really quickly and see whether or not it's feasible for us.
So through you, Mr. Chair, somebody can remind me if I'm incorrect, but I think council did pass a motion to add this to the business plan. But I don't see this as a massive amount of work, but it's above and beyond core service.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay. I'm not seeing anyone else in the queue. So I would need a mover for the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Any comments? Councillor Fernandez?
Yeah, I want to make a comment that I want to be cautious about the fact that there are a lot of projects in here that, as a councillor, I don't have a real full understanding of. So especially things around effective and efficient city services. The reality is we don't get into the weeds and the details of this. So I really don't have any idea if that is something that we should be moving forward or we should just continue the work on. I mean, certainly things like purchasing bylaw revision, I can understand where that's going. But then there are other ones, the fire master plan, I can understand where we have an understanding of that. So I just want to make sure that when we're approving the business plan, that we're not automatically approving funding for every single item in here. And I finally found the one that I really should have brought up, which is the City Hall outdoor spaces. A funding of $500,000 has been added to the capital budget in 2017. I don't think we're really nearly ready to start putting that much money into that City Hall spaces. I know we've done a lot of consultation and I know we've had a lot of conversation, but when that presentation was brought to council, we sat here with our jaws on the ground saying, you've got to be kidding me, this is how much it's going to cost. So to me, approving this business plan is like saying, here's the carte blanche, go ahead and start doing all of the things you've identified here. And I want to make sure that if we were to say on budget day, no, we should be moving the City Hall outdoor spaces to 2018 in 2017, we're not going to hear from staff, well, but you passed it on December the 5th as part of the business plan. Can somebody, I didn't mean to ask a question in my comments, but it sort of came around to that.
No, that's fine, and you're correct. Mr. Wilmer, do you want to?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So certainly any resolution coming out of committee today or council next week is not carte blanche to go ahead and presume that funding is in place. So I can assure you of that. You will note that the recommendation before you is subject to budget deliberations, so it really does leave it to final budget day for council's direction in that regard. When it comes to Carl's Air Square specifically, though, I would remind council that you have already passed a motion directing staff to report back on next steps with that. So that you'd need to consider if there's going to be a different position taken on final budget day than what you already have, that you should put your mind to that.
And I appreciate you reminding us of that, because I only picked on that because it's such a large amount. It's $500,000, and there are lots and lots of projects here that have no amount of money attached to them, and that I would understand would be some of like long-term financial plan would be an ongoing core service. We're of course going to continue doing a financial plan for the city. I wish we had a better understanding of some of what the costs were, and I don't know if we can do that. I think that would be really helpful, Laurie, in the future. If we even if we were to say projects related to this part of the organization ongoing will cost. That may be really hard to do, but I think we have to have a better understanding of that. Does that help at all?
Ms. Major, is that possible? I mean, part of the issue is that a lot of what we see here, again, everything that actual has any significant dollars tied to it, we approve through each subsequent budget process. The issue is that some of this requires work of staff, which is harder to quantify in terms of the effort that's put in. But Ms. Major, do you want to comment on the ability to put in a better indication of financial costing?
So through the chair, maybe if
Oh,
I
Ms.
could,
Wilmer,
I think
sure.
really that is the intent of pages 3.4 and 3.5, where we get into financial implications of individual projects.
Yeah.
I think what we don't do is where current staff resources are going to be assigned to a project, and it will be done by our current staff, whether it's core service or whether it's a strategic initiative. We haven't got into that kind of a breakdown of resources.
And maybe
So
that
the question is that possible? Right?
Yeah, but you know what? I appreciate that clarification, Mr. Wilmer, because I think that's really maybe what we could see is this is a part of core services. And that existing staff is already working on this, or will continue working on it, or will be working on it. I sometimes think that we forget that down the road, if we're going to be doing something on Rockway Centre Partnership Development, and I'm just picking it out because I just have that page open, that's going to require consultant services. And that's where I personally would prefer to have a little bit of better understanding. If our staff is already working on it, or it will be our staff that's working on it, that's not going to change really the cost. But if we're going to say, okay, we have to definitely hire a consultant for the Rockway Centre Partnership Development, we may want to look at it in a different manner. Or, I mean, I don't want to push it out, but do you understand where I'm coming from?
I think I do. I think it's also important, though, to be clear on terminology, that just because staff resources are going to be working on something does not make it core service.
Right.
If it's a project with a defined scope and end date, then it is a project and therefore not core service. And we try to do as much as we can using staff resources if we've got capacity and capability.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I don't want to belabor it anymore, but I think my message is kind of clear. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Marsh, I have you in the queue. You're good? Okay. Okay, yeah, there's no one else in the queue then. It's been moved by Councillor Naidus. I will comment only that, yes, there are things in here that I'm certainly not so sure about, but the process will bear itself out and we'll deal with them as we see more detail and more business cases. So I definitely do not think that approving this necessarily means that we're going to be going ahead with the items herein. But it is a good snapshot and overview, and I think it's clearly outlined, so thank you for the work. Okay, so on this, those in favor? And opposed? I think I missed a hand on that. Sorry, one more time. Those in favor? Okay, that carries unanimously. Thank you. That concludes. We are going to go into special counsel, acting mayor, Councillor Galloway-Seelock.